Hello, folks. Welcome to Osquery office hours. Here we are. It's December. Not much to say in Boston. First section is announcements. I don't have anything to announce. Anyone else? Okay. Next up, agenda items. Actually, I'll pause. Next section is sort of an open section for anyone who has questions, issues, PRs they're feeling blocked on. I see some PRs up. I want to push those down into the agenda. I think we'll talk maybe through stuff for a 5.0, or not 5.0, excuse me, for a whatever release we're up to. Any other random items?
I mean, I have a kind of a random item. Today I was working on the TLS, let's say the TLS API. I wanted to update the TLS Python script. But anyway, I noticed that we have some weird, strange, and undocumented flag named TLS Node API, which apparently switches the way in which Osquery asks for the configuration to the backend. Basically, instead of doing that through a post, HTTP post, it does that through a GET. It also adds like an element to the request, like _get, to let the backend know that they want the response to be different, and also adds or expects from the response that the config is a separate key element in the response, and it might be escaped because it's Unicode. But anyway, it's basically I don't understand exactly what is that, why it exists. It seems that it's really old code, like it has been added 8 years ago, and back then it was a hidden flag too. So I guess I just opened a pull request to. I mean, I would remove it. It's I don't understand. It's undocumented. It's hidden.
I mean, I never had heard of that flag, and I occasionally do parse the hidden flag and declare flag macros. So yeah, I also just posted a PR that, as you mentioned, it's very old. Teddy had put up, adding that. Hopefully, that provides some information.
Oh, because interesting. When I went through, let's see, it's still there. Yeah. Interesting. When I checked which commit were connected to some of the changes, I got a commit that was not connected to any pull request, so did not notice this one. And so apparently this has more comments actually on the functionality, and so it apparently also has been slightly changed, and maybe. Yeah, here it is. The TLS API should treat his node. I see.
I have no more context on this than you, so
I see. I think they were trying. I think it has been, I don't know, half broken or half undone in the time, because from this PR, it seems that the objective was to, have multiple endpoints.
And it just seems to add the node key
for
the URI.
Should treat the clients as nodes. I mean,
is it
I
for
don't.
using like routing requests depending on node key? Is it maybe because of that? Like some customers maybe using.
Yeah, but that
which
code is
flag
not
are you
there.
talking about, Stefano?
Sorry, come again.
Which flag are you talking about?
TLS node API, which is
Thank you.
false by default. Yeah. I mean, the problem is that that code does not exist anymore today. Well, not the one that has been posted by. Or wait a second, or does it? I think No, sorry, it still does. I think I misread something, but yeah, it definitely seems to add that node key seems to have different backends respond to those endpoints depending on who's the client. But yeah, I was also mostly wondering because the code in the Python test is broken, is incorrect. So
I have no context on this code, but one of the things that's sort of unusual about Osquery is it doesn't play well if you have external node management, right? You put in a secret, but the secret is generally shared across your organization, and then Osquery sort of registers itself. So the way you're describing this sounds like it's like send the secret every time. That starts getting interesting if you have per node secrets instead of like an organizational wide secret. But I'm guessing a little bit, just thinking about, okay, if I ran a fleet of 10,000 nodes and I had, some Puppet infrastructure or something to distribute secrets, then why wouldn't I make node specific secrets and tie them back to a third, like a central managed point?
Though the node key, so here what it sends is not the secret, it sends the node key, which is the identifier for the node.
That's true. I mean, I was looking at Stefano's linked PR of TLS secret always.
Wait, which one? I mean, where did I do that? Sorry.
In the chat, Charvel, excuse me, in the chat, Charvel linked to poll 1407, which documents a TLS secret always flag.
Oh, I see. Among the other things, I see.
Yeah. I'm just like, all of these feel, I can't even tell. I can't even tell if these were all similar or what.
So yeah, so I think the secret is for the very first time for the registration of the node or the client was registered to the backend, and to prevent the backend from accepting any node, you have a secret. But then when it is enrolled, Osquery does not send the secret anymore normally, but it does send the node key to say, hey, I am X. I don't know. I mean, I see maybe sending the secret always as I want to always be sure that you are who you say you are, sort of.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, are you asking a little bit if we need to keep this functionality?
So, first of all, thank you, Charlotte. But apparently, yes. But at the same time, I did not notice. I somehow totally lost one piece of the code, which was the one inside TLS.cpp, because the code I read, it seemed I only saw half of it, and it seemed weird, broken. And so now I understand that more that it was a routing attempt. So maybe all of this just resolves in, okay, since there is now more code, maybe I can understand it better, and I can fix it in just for completeness in the Python code. But though it was also interesting for me, I was trying to understand why the Python test code was not giving errors. So it seems that our tests do not catch when code on that branch is broken. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can
Oh.
get a George.
Oh, now oh, this is interesting. Now I see what you mean by routing, because it puts the node key into the URL directly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, that's interesting. Huh. So that implies, I mean, if I thought about that, right, that would sort of, if you had load balancers that were doing balancing, but they could only look at the URLs and not the post content, and you needed to route your nodes to appropriate backend controllers, then you would need this. So what does this say about Facebook's internal architecture circa 2016?
I also wonder if like one of those early doorman or I forget the other one from GitHub probably also used this.
That's a good thought.
I think in the short term, we should probably still keep it if we can keep it and just fix the test. And then maybe just announce it in core or something like, hey, if we decide on deleting this or getting rid of this flag, that, hey, we are getting rid of it. If anyone depends on it, you know, holler.
I mean, honestly, I would just put up a pull request. Like, I feel like there's a huge amount of lurking, very confusing code here, and
yeah,
you know, I would be inclined to just float removing it and see if anyone complains.
or
But
that.
I don't know. Maybe that's unkind.
Yeah. So I have to say again, I asked this, but to be fair, it all started from an error because I definitely did not see the part in the utility.h file, just because I search error, and since it's intact, it seems complete, albeit not very well tested apparently. I'm not proposing to remove it necessarily, but yeah, I'm not pushing to remove it.
I don't know. I feel a little bit weird about hidden flags in a way. I feel like they're sort of like they're great for experiments, but they feel like something. They feel weird. So I feel like we should kind of either commit to it or remove it. I mean, I guess it's documented on the wiki or in the doc set.
What exactly? This specific flag is not. There's no documentation.
No, it's the secret always one, which is kind of related, but not exactly this one.
Like, it's also possible that there were a bunch of them and they were sort of overlapping and they diverged.
Yeah.
Like, but flags, I mean.
To your point about hidden flags, I think we should maybe kind of like document them and kind of like not make them hidden, but also have a proper wording that like, don't use this in production. This is for experiments or testing or debug, whatever. Maybe you should call them debug flags. I don't know.
Well, some are and some aren't, because if I think about these ones, I imagine that this like TLS secret only or TLS node API, whatever it's called, I don't think that was an experimental flag. Like, I think that was for someone's production routers.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, maybe experimental in the sense of, do we want to move the API this way? But I don't. It doesn't feel experimental or debugging in the same way that like TLS dump does. So I don't know. I think maybe I would agree. if your point is that we should audit all the hidden flags and maybe make them not hidden, I think I probably agree.
Or I was just thinking even simpler, like have a page on Wiki with like hidden flags and like this is what they do, or you know,
Mhm.
it's like use it at your own risk, your mileage may vary kind of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I see like a lot, like skimming them here. I see a lot of stuff that's just kind of like tuning parameters.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons is that those, well, being hidden they do not appear in the help of Osquery. And the other thing, yeah, I mean, don't use them unless you know what you are doing, basically. So the default was to have things like secure and I guess configured for something that known to work, etc. But yeah, there are also flags around RocksDB. I think the amount of threads it uses to save, write on disk, etc. So
Yeah. I don't know. It feels like there's a can of worms here in dealing with hidden flags, and I guess I don't even know anymore what I think correct is for the issue you brought up.
I mean, again, we don't have to decide now. I can, I can open an issue just to track this. Maybe the other partially weird thing I noticed again is that the configuration embedded in the response for the GET request can be escaped in some way. So there is a function that then unescape Unicode. And this is not present though in the normal path. So yeah. But
Someone
yeah,
had a very interesting router.
Yeah.
Anyhow, move on to, I guess, PRs and 511 and stuff like that. So I think we're still hoping to get a 511 release out by the end of the year. And I kind of took the PRs that were here and I just stuck them into the milestone. So I guess they're flagged, so we can talk about them. There is 8202, which is detecting new files after startup in process file events.
So on that one, I was preparing a long answer for that because in the past we have dealt with it, and the some of the issues, or try to deal with the issues around that table. And so first thing I wanted to understand, so were you able basically to use it correctly with no issues after your PR change, I assume, Lucas?
Yeah. But the thing that I didn't do that Zach commented on the PR is that we need a way to measure performance impact of my change. And I wanted to hear your thoughts, everyone here, like how to measure performance hit when it comes to Osquery changes. Do we have any tooling? Do we just use the watcher process? Stuff like that. But if functionality-wise, yes, it's working as expected. New files get reported. So yeah, but again, I believe Zach commented on the issue that he's worried about performance impact.
Yeah, if you can add something about that before, because so my experience with that table is that is actually barely working. The issue is there are really multiple issues. So first of all, the fact that it's thin, and to work, it has to enable all the open, write, read syscalls, etc. system-wide. So that's especially the open syscall that's very heavy and very, very chatty. My last experience specifically was just connecting to a VM with that enabled. And I did have like a ZH shell plugin, which basically when you connect, it runs Git because it tries to see if you are inside a Git repository. And so it does touch some file, let's say in a spike, but basically this was breaking it in the sense that it was making it hit the threshold, the throttling I did insert some time ago. Yeah. The problem I see though here is that throttling engages itself when it reaches like 4K records, which is like not huge, but it's also not small. That number I recall. So I did add the throttling there. That number was picked up, I think, more from the processes table, which also uses the audit system, and the memory usage there was around 400 megabytes when it was peaking. When it was reaching that amount of backlog. So again, what I see is that it's easily. Oh, so did you see? Yeah.
No, now that you mention it, now I tested this on CentOS 7 VM. It works, but then I also test this on a Ubuntu VM. I think it was 22 or something, and it wasn't working. Like actually, it wasn't working at all because of this throttling. So, but that happens already with the current version, right? I mean, my PR we should check if it adds performance impact. If it doesn't, then it's a little bit, it does work better than current main or master. But yes, I agree that it's not, the table is not working 100% of the time.
That's so I see. No, sorry, I was taking the long way to say I'm questioning if it is valuable to make work in it unless some more core things are addressed. Mainly so, and more on the PR. The problem I see is that so regex parsing is by itself slow, definitely slower than not regex checking, but doing that manually. But I mean, in that case, I do understand why. Why it is done through regex. But anyway, what it causes is that it increases the chances of throttling, because it also slows down the parts of the pipeline, of the audit processing pipeline, which is already slower than the part that just reads the records from the netlink socket. And so,
okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you say it appears to be working sometimes, and it's like the amount of operations on the system are okay, like are what you would consider normal, and in that situation the table works, I think Sure, but otherwise, again, as I said, when I tried it, it really seemed that it. Sometimes I just did a single ls on inside the folder with few files, and it was already not working. On top of that,
Right.
though, there is a fix that maybe a bug fix that we did not send upstream, but we also did not further test. It seemed to improve things, but we don't fully know if that fixes things, because there is a bug with how we read from the netlink socket. And I guess, let me link the change. I guess I'm interested also if that might fix up the problem on Ubuntu. Because we know that the issue, what we then saw on Ubuntu is that the netlink socket, although this is complicated. So the audit in the kernel has a backlog for the records. So technically, if you make it huge, you should expect that even if there's a spike of records being registered, it's able to keep them in the backlog, and then you can just read it after. But apparently, this is not enough, because simply the throughput, so the amount of events generated, if you have something that continuously generates events, would sometimes fill up the buffer of the socket, the netlink socket itself, which is separate from the backlog, causing that buffs error, which then causes Osquery to reset the handle and block for a long time, block receiving new records. So that fix should do two things. It should fix the buffs issue, in the sense that it asks the kernel to not send that, but we are still handling it. So basically, we are really not interested in it, to be fair. We have the backlog in the kernel, but at the same time, it's also increasing, as far as it's possible, the buffer of the netlink socket.
Okay, so what I gather is this table is not working, 100% of the time, and this change will make it work like fewer times, so I got less, possibly. So maybe I could check the performance impact of this table. I have some ideas, and then present that data. Maybe it doesn't change the, I don't know, it doesn't impact a whole lot. I mean, we can add it or not, but again, I can provide some data on the PR around performance impact, if that helps.
Yeah, I would suggest, if you, I recall you mentioned that on Ubuntu it did not work. I mean,
but on Ubuntu it didn't work even on master, without my changes, right? On master, I wasn't able to make that table work there.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not making a judgment, on the PR due to that.
No, that's fine. Just check. Yeah, just saying that. On master, I wasn't able to make the table work on my Ubuntu VM. I don't know what I was missing. But yeah, I agree that my PR might not help improving the table. But again, I'll probably add more data around performance, in the coming weeks. I think I have an idea on using the watchdog to estimate, CPU time, system time, and so on. Does that make sense as a next step, or do we really don't want this change because we think it's not a good change at all?
But I have a question about this. This is on the old audit system.
Yeah.
How does that sort of work with the shift toward the BPF? I don't think we don't have process file events in BPF yet, right? So I don't know. I'm just sort of wondering, do we have better rope in BPF that can be gives it better performance. Rope, we know that's where we want everything to be going anyhow. So
yeah, like I say, there's no theme for now for BPF anyway. And yeah, on BPF it should be not the current iteration, but the new iteration, which though would be only supported on recent kernels, more recent kernels like 4.18, 4.16, something like that. It should be more performant than Audit just because it doesn't use a string. The events, the records are not strings but are binary, so there's less data to ship around. So no, I mean, sorry, the comment. Okay, I think I should at this point open an issue. I'll like there are really a lot of things that I think that basically will make you like you do this change, but then you will soon after find another issue anyway. And I was just wondering if, like, I'm not sure if we really can bring it to a state that it works. And I was trying to understand maybe either the less amount of steps that we can test if it eventually can work, or basically avoiding the time spent trying to make it work. But yeah.
Okay, so a question around this table. So is this table, let's say some users in the future want some theme tables for Linux, right?
Yeah.
So process file events is maybe not a good idea, right? Like, no. What are the alternatives then?
Yeah. So the problem is, so not the iteration it is currently in. So my doubt is that I'm not sure if just by making like small changing and not addressing more core architectural issues, it makes sense to again work on it with the current architecture. Like another thing I could suggest, but again, I did not immediately because I found it not working just by mere like ls on a single user just doing a ls, was that the rules are installed again as system-wide, and also in your PR you are adding a filtering that is post-capture. But if we instead have a system that installs rules, audit rules, that changes rules, update rules, which points to specific files or folders, then is the kernel that does the filtering, and it's not more a system-wide capturing. But again, I'm not sure if that's enough. Yeah, the lib audit. Okay. Yeah, the lib audit library has. I mean, we are already installing rules, and then the rules have also additional options, flags that you can.
Okay, because it doesn't really, because right now we're getting every event, right?
Yeah, from the whole system, and then filtering. Yeah.
All right. So maybe I can take two action items. One of them is just analyze the performance impact, maybe just to have that data there in the PR. But then maybe open a separate issue to discuss, like maybe a refactor of the audit system.
Yeah, sorry, I did not have much time. I really have an ugly like note thing. If you or I open an issue first, I can then dump all the informations we have on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And maybe just ask a naive question. The intent here is that if you say something like monitor Etsy and then someone creates a subdirectory inside Etsy, it will traverse and follow that in the future. That goal makes sense to me, and I have no deeper comments than Stefano has about the implementation.
Yeah, it's just that users expect like new files to be reported if you just put a path there. That's why, like, I believe there are like 4 or 5 issues around that.
As far as I know, this has plagued all forms of iNotify and FIM across most platforms for all time. So
This plagues Windows as well, but with Mac OS, thankfully, with the endpoint security, it's better.
Yeah, in fact, another question is partially does I wonder if there is anyone successfully using process file events given all the issues that it has. And so that partially also where I was wondering if it made sense to either work on it at all or even again not addressing some other
It's definitely being used, but it's like monitor my TLS private key or monitor this. Like it's very specific paths, but I do know it's being used in production by companies.
Charvel, one of the things I have seen across many jobs and many companies is people often do things to meet compliance standards that don't actually impact their reality. Like an example I'm encountering a lot these days is, there's a recommendation to have antivirus software across all your platforms. So people are installing ClamAV for their Linux laptops and calling it a success. ClamAV is designed to detect Windows viruses in a mail store. So there's a lot of like, this doesn't meet your actual objective. So I wonder if there are people who are using this table to meet a compliance objective that it may not actually help with.
Yeah, and I think I cannot speak to the actual security of it, but they want things monitored and it monitors them.
There's also another thing that I remember from the table is that since the events that you get, like you have to piece multiple events together, and you also have to keep a cache state that you have to construct to keep mapping between file descriptors and path. As soon as you start losing some of those records, the whole state gets broken, and that brokenness gets inherited by new file descriptors, etc. So yeah, there's also that part. That even if it's perfect in the sense that we remove all the bugs, I mean, at a certain point, it will throttle. It will have to throttle, most likely, and yeah, the state gets broken until you I think until you restart Osquery, basically, or unless I don't know, we decide to put something that just brutally dumps the entire state. But yeah.
I think my takeaway from that is that this PR will probably not land in a release that happens in December.
Yeah, that makes sense given the state of the table. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. We had a couple of Victor things. Lucas, maybe you added these, or maybe Stefano added these.
Yeah, I added them. He's not able to join, but basically there's a PR for the keychain issues with the keychain file being corrupted. I believe it's as soon as we have time, Stefano, I think it needs a re-review. That's all, just a reminder. And then there's another issue that I think Victor opened yesterday around scheduled queries. That I believe it's a bug, but maybe, I don't know, something to be aware of.
Yeah,
Sorry, you go on.
No, yeah, sorry. I know about that. I was briefly discussing it with Victor. So yeah, the request is actually older, but they are asking for the scheduled query stats to be persisted, because currently they only lasts for until Osquery is restarted, and then you lose those stats. And actually the same would be, I think, with the newest distributed stats being added, which are, again, only saved in memory. And so the issue would be, let's save them in RocksDB in some place so that they can be restored. I think the only additional thing I was thinking is that there are some things in there that are cumulative, and I don't recall if they are then all averaged, or there is something that just cumulative, so something may eventually roll over if you keep it persistent.
Yeah,
Not
but
a
I think
massive issue.
the issue that Victor mentioned is around clearing, not it's
Just
8209.
distributed is different.
Sorry.
When I think it came from Fleet, but when we started tracking distributed stats, we talked about whether it made sense to track them in RocksDB or just return them immediately. And the conclusion was that it just made sense to return them and not track them at all, although we were kind of a little ambivalent. So I don't think there's anything to do related to this issue for distributed stats. But this issue is absolutely one that's just like a weird corner case. And I don't know what correct is, right? Like, we only track these stats by name, and there's actually a similar issue, right? So if you change the query SQL, it confuses your stats. But there's a very similar follow-on where if you change the query SQL, it does not reset the count or the diff behavior.
I see.
So there's a lot of things that we index by query name and assume that the SQL is immutable. I don't want to defend this decision. It's just what has always been. And I would be probably in favor of updating it. I don't know that I have a strong opinion. I think if people think we should change that, I'm in favor of it. I don't feel strongly, but I feel like maybe it's worth like thinking about them in tandem.
Yeah, sorry, I talked about them in the wrong order. The persisting came after we discussed the clearing. Yeah. Yeah, as I said, I mean, technically, I don't have any issue in the sense that, yeah, I see it's doable. I don't see any issue in doing it. I wasn't sure if, as you actually mentioned, there was any other end user reason for not clearing them. Yeah, I don't have a good answer for your question. Like, yeah, I can see for consistency, but at the same time, I would more expect for them to be cleared. Honestly, it makes more sense. Yeah.
Yeah, we can key the key should be the name and SQL, right? In a way that you store. So every time, but again, that will require a little bit of changes here and there. Right?
It's just weird because, like, if you use the differential queries, if you use differential logs and then you change SQL, what would you expect, right? Because, like, even if you reran the logs as a snapshot at that moment in time and reset the counter, like, suddenly your data means something else. So I don't even know what makes sense, but like I'm not opposed. I'm just like, I just want to point out that it's confusing. Osquery is confusing.
Sorry, just to understand, you said when it, like, if you change the SQL, the data changes. But yeah, again, that's what you would expect. And so you wouldn't expect at the same time. So why having a differential between the data from the old query and the new one? I mean,
Well,
I can understand if the change is very minimal, like you're just adding a column. But yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it's sort of like, yeah, I agree. Exactly. Right. If you're just like, oh, let me quote something or let me add a column, then it makes sense. You want to see it in that diff stream, right? But if you're like, oh, now my data source is different, the data looks the same, but I've actually invalidated it. You can't compare across this change because I changed my data source. Or maybe you renamed, maybe you did everything differently. I don't even know. I don't know how to think about this problem.
So though for the stats, I think it's slightly different in that case because you are not getting, you're not getting a diff. Like most of them are cumulative for the old query, and then you have some columns which instead just tells you the very last query what statistics it had. So when you change it, yeah, again, you're interested in the new stats. I don't see how useful it is to have again the old or accumulate on the old stats when you are changing the query in that case. Yeah.
Bye, Charbel. My gut sense is that we should discourage people from substantially changing the SQL without changing the check name. But I wouldn't like block a PR that meets 8209. I would just be like, whatever, it just makes it all more confusing. Don't do any of this.
All right, so should we maybe try working on a PR that addresses this, or is this something like that we're still unclear about what we want?
I would accept the PR that reset the stats, that tied the stats collection to the checksum of. I don't know if you want to checksum because I don't know if white space should trigger it, but like whatever, I don't care.
Okay. All right, so maybe we can make a PR and then discuss as the solution and the PR itself. All right, sounds good.
Yeah, it seems fine to me. I just think it kind of makes things more confusing because you see a divergence in behaviors. But I don't know that that's a blocker or anything. It just is.
And that's all I have on my side. Sorry for taking so long.
It's fine. I know I've got a couple of PRs, but I don't know if we want to talk about them. Mike has got a PR to add version collations in. So that's kind of cool. This lets us like sort based on versions on semvars. So that's nice. And I know he's working on, I don't remember if he's put the PR up for it yet, the ability to add default collations to table columns as well. So that lets us do things like define the default collation on the versions, on like the bundle version IDs and things like that. So you can then start saying select star from this where name is X and version is above Y and get back and like have that work without having to break out the version comparisons. And yeah, they're PRs. I think it's good functionality. The other one that's maybe a much bigger conversation is that he's looking at re-implementing lock devices. I think there's even a PR up for it. And replacing the UDEV logic with something that basically does what LSBLK does and traverses the sys stuff. I don't quite know Linux this deeply, so I'd mostly say read the PRs, but the goal there is to allow passing in a context, because right now with block devices you can't pass in a context. It won't, if your context doesn't, because UDEV you have to iterate from parent down. You can't go from a child all the way up to the parent But that's not true if we read in the systree stuff first. So anyhow, I think those are up. We'd also get to get rid of all of UDev with that one too, because we don't use UDev anywhere else. So kind of neat stuff. Anyhow, I'll probably tag some Linux people for review on those at some point. But
Yeah, for a time I wondered if on that UTF case, if it had a way to access its internals, because I think it does, like the library itself does scan the sysfs32 to create an internal database that then you are querying through the APIs. But then, as you say, the APIs that it shows doesn't let you go backward with the search.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, if you can drop, I guess, if we can drop that library, and I mean, at the same time, I don't think we have seen yet other possible uses for it than one less library to support.
Yeah. I mean, I think it ended up pretty clean. I think he looked at whether we should iterate systree and then query out to UDev, and it just didn't add anything. Like all the data was right there in systree anyhow. So yeah. Anyhow, if you want to peek at those, cool. If not, I'll maybe go make some noise in Slack at some point.
Yeah, I'll try. I cannot make promises. I'm a bit short of time these days. I'll try to have a look at them.
I can probably review the collation
one of the weekends. Yeah. Okay.
I can probably review those. The block devices one gets a little bit further outside for me. So anything else people want to talk about? If not, I think we're probably done. Thank you all. Thank you for code reviews, for showing up. Lucas for pushing the things Fleet wants to get in. So thank you all.
Thank you. See ya.
Bye. Thank you.